This is Thank you, Emily. Today, we're talking about priorities and pivots, time budgeting, especially in a small shop, but hopefully with some thoughts and skills and tools that are relevant to all. Before we get started, just a little bit about Philanthropy Club. Phi Club was started over 20 years ago by Gus Wilhelmy, the co-founder of the Safer Foundation. We are 100% volunteer driven. So you'll hear at the end of this Zoom, I will beg for volunteers. But our singular goal is to level the playing field for all Illinois nonprofits when it comes to access to funding to support the mission of their organizations and the communities that we serve. We fulfill that goal by providing no-cost monthly programming. Our programming year is February to November because so many of us are managing annual campaigns, December and January, or manage them December, recovering in January. And we support nonprofits with access to funders and by offering technical skill building for effective fundraising. We are sponsored by Forefront. We are so thankful to them. I will put a link in the chat in just a moment to Forefront's website to learn more about their services for Illinois-based nonprofits. I'm a Forefront member, happy to talk about the worth that my organization gets from them if you have any questions. But our official Forefront staff partner is Susie Lee, who is waving at you right now, but soon we'll go back behind the scenes to ensure that we have a seamless time of learning this morning. It still says key in here, Susie. I'm so sorry. I proofread these 8 times. Thank you so much to Susie for all that she does, both on Forefront, both on Phi Club and other Forefront programs. If you got this invite forwarded to you this session and you'd like to receive future emails about programs directly, I will also put Susie's email in the chat. You can send her a note or you can email registration at myforefront.org and ask to be added to our list. All right, just a couple notes about today. Please take this opportunity, use the chat to introduce yourself and your organization. We love this to be a space of networking, a space of learning, and a space for promotion. Go ahead and promote that event. Tell us if you're hiring or if you're looking for work. We love to know that and share that. I will also ask you to use the chat, at least in the first part of our conversation, for any questions that you have. First, like 20 to 30 minutes, we just have some structured questions for our panelists. My co-host and co-leader for Phi Club, Jessica Harris, is going to be checking the chat, so we will not lose any of that, I promise you. But finally, if you want to ask a question anonymously, this is being recorded. If you want to be off camera, completely anonymous, you can also message me directly, and I'll make sure to check through those before the end of the program. All right, just some more notes of introduction. I'm Kate Spelman. I am moderating the panel. I am the Director of Development and Communications now for the Foundation for Hearing and Speech Resources, which is a small Illinois nonprofit serving children with hearing loss. My fabulous co-moderator and co-leader of Phi Club is Jessica Harris. She, again, will be mostly off-screen moderating the chat, but she is the founder and CEO of the JRH Effect. I have 2 fabulous humans here today to share with you their frontline lessons about pivots, priorities, delegation, and more. First, I'm going to introduce you to Karla Altmayer. Raised on Chicago's South Side by a single mother from Mexico, Karla is driven by their family's experience with poverty, sexual violence, racism, and incarceration to dismantle the cultural conditions enabling gender-based violence. As an attorney, they developed an innovative and nationally recognized promotion model so survivors could organize and build solidarity. As co-director of Healing to Action, a terrific Chicago-based nonprofit, Karla continues to collaborate with survivors, building their individual and their collective power. We'll hear more from Karla in just a moment. Our second fabulous panelist is Martine Caverl. Martine integrated years of experience in grassroots community, youth, and international solidarity organizing with her nursing, street medic, emergency preparedness, and birth work skills to develop the Black Health Collective that became Ujimaa Medics, or U Medics. In 2014, she started teaching community care response for gunshot wounds with fellow organizers in Chicago. And in 2015, they founded U Medics. Today, she's the executive director and is grateful for the opportunity to build a future for this organization that she loves. With the help of family, mentors, and trusted comrades, Martine has completed 20 hours of community emergency response team training through the city of Chicago, became a level 4 outdoor leadership instructor with the Black Survival Network, and graduated from New York University and the Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. Currently, she is a registered nurse and a certified case manager, and her practice encompasses public health, healing justice, and organizing the power of care networks. She stays inspired by the legacy she has inherited from her ancestors and the one we will leave behind for her daughter's generation. Before we move formally into our topics, I asked Karla to just share a grounding exercise with us to let us fully arrive in the space and shake off whatever we are carrying with us. So I'm going to put my screen down and invite Karla to take the stage and ground us.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and great to connect with you all. Some familiar faces, which is really cool. So today I wanted to share, I want to share an activity that I don't want to rush through it, but I'm going to just like focus on an aspect of it. So this activity is from the Politicized Healing Collective that was started with the Chicago Torture Justice Center and those members. So it's not something that we've created, but I want to give them credit. Um, and I think we are at a time where we are constantly, you know, we're assessing our safety in this moment, right? Whether it's like waiting for safety or like understanding whether it's going to be there. And it's not something new necessarily to many of us in nonprofit work. I think we all have grappled with it in one way or another. And so I think what's important is understanding that this is, trauma or these kinds of acts of violence force us to choose between safety and connection. But what I want us to focus on today is actually building our reserve of resilience, because resilience works to say that we can actually have safety and connection. We don't have to choose between the two. Um, so sorry, my screen just give me one moment here. So I want to share so I want us to take a minute to just close our eyes. You can go off camera or if you feel more comfortable, but just take a minute to close your eyes or have a soft gaze and rest your body in where it is. If you're standing, make sure your feet are grounded into the ground. If you're sitting, make sure that you are actually sitting and that your feet are on the ground and putting your palms face down on your knees. And I just want us to do a body scan, just like a quick, like observing your body starting from the top, like what is happening, how's your head feeling, how are your shoulders feeling, are they scrunched, are they tight, how's your breath, is your breath shallow, is your breath deep? No judgment, don't feel like you have to change it, just notice. Keep moving to your chest, noticing your heart beating, noticing whether your muscles are relaxed. Keep moving down to your abdomen, your hips, just noticing like the tensions, where it's tight, where it might be relaxed. And keep going down all the way to your feet. And I want us to take one deep collective breath. So just inhale deeply and exhale. Now, I want you to think of a person or a place or a space that makes you feel safety and connection at the same time. Maybe it's a person that exists or has existed. Maybe it's a combination of people. And imagine them in the space that also makes you feel safety and connected. Now, as you think of this person, I want you to think about, how is it showing up in your body? What's shifting? Are your shoulders dropping? Do you feel your heart slowing down? Do you feel your heart swell? Do you feel your feet rooting into the ground? As you notice this, just take a minute and give gratitude to this experience that lives in your body because it exists. Safety and connection exist. We're going to return to this space soon, but before that, I want you to take a deep breath one more time. Slowly opening your eyes or returning to the room and noticing three colors, distinct colors, to ground yourself in the room. Resilience is about not letting the bleakness in front of us deprive us of joy and connection. And we all have that ability to build a reserve of resilience. I'll turn it over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Karla. I really appreciate you sharing that with us and getting us started in a more grounded and present way. Let's get into it, though. Today, we're going to talk about what it is like to work, thrive, succeed, and lead, specifically in some smaller organizations. Both of you, Martine and Karla, you are founders as well as leaders, which comes with unique challenges and, of course, a unique history. So as we start just sort of to level set, I'm hoping you can both give us just a brief overview of your trajectory with your organization, what hats you wear now, maybe the history of that, what you've been able to hand off to others. And since we just heard from Karla, Martine, maybe I'll invite you to speak first.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Martine Caverl. My organization is Ujimaa Medics, Review Medics. And Karla, thank you so much for running that grounding. And I love that you used something that was developed by the folks at Chicago Torture Justice Center. And I'm going to take a moment to say thank you, Forefront, thank you, Kate. I'm seeing some familiar faces, so I would love to see you all here. I would love to chat with you all later about how this went for you. But yeah, in terms of your question, which is, what got me here? So my organization was started really in 2014. And the people who created the organization were doing the work of the organization before we were calling it an organization, if that makes sense. We started doing, like it said in my bio, we were doing community care response for gunshot wounds because that was something that we thought was important and necessary for our care network. That's something we all needed to know how to do. That's something we wanted to teach each other how to do. And it was one of those immediate things that we knew we could do to help take care of one another. But we didn't stop there. It wasn't the only thing. As time went on, we added more and more types of health and safety topics in terms of what are the things that we know we need to know. And if we know we need it, then we know our community needs it. And that's really how it's grown from there. But we didn't have a name for, I don't know, almost a year. And then we created a name and a structure. But yeah, we were all volunteer run for the first 7 years that we were operating. We went without a bank account for the first 3 years. We were completely self-funded. We focused on what we had around the house to teach with because that's what we knew people would actually end up using, versus, a kit you could purchase, you're going to have to use what you have around the house, right? And so, yeah, helped to found an organization. We did the first workshop at my house. So we did the first workshop. We used stuff I had around the house, and it kept growing from there. And so 2014 we started. 2021, we ended up securing enough funding. Sorry, one.
We'll talk about this, but Martine, Karla, and I are also balancing multiple roles, which include parenting, home ownership, all the wonderful things that go into making a rich, full life that also sometimes feels unmanageable.
All right. Sorry,
Yeah.
y'all. We didn't need that. We didn't need that on the recording. Thanks. So, um, we were able to raise enough money to where I was able to leave my job and work full time for the organization. So we spent 2021 figuring out what our funding situation looked like. We decided that yes, we'll have the funding to hire staff. So in January 2022, I started as executive director. And so that was January 2022. Today, February 2026, we have 7 employees. So that's how we've grown over that time. And what else do you want me to talk about in this section? Sorry.
Sort of, I'm curious if you could offer any thoughts about what the transition from a volunteer led to a
Hmm.
staff organization has entailed specific to your role. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, how has that changed
Yeah, of
what
course.
you manage your time?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that when we were all volunteer run, so I had a full-time job the whole time. And so I would work my very full-time job. Of course, I had my family life, but in my quote unquote spare time, I was using that to help build up the organization, to carry out the programs, to coordinate the meetings with the other volunteers, to raise money. And so I thought, wow, when I finally am able to start working full time, it's going to be so much. I'm not sure if I ever used the word easier. If I did, I'd take it back. Right? Um, but I suppose, the important thing in that transition was I was able to give my complete focus and attention to this organization. And so once I was able to do that, I was able to understand some of the missing pieces that we needed to build some structures around in order to create a workplace. So a place where people could actually have jobs, a place where we could make sure people are paid on time, make sure that we're in compliance with the different rules and regulations. We have to contend with, Chicago, Cook County, state of Illinois, federal. We have a fiscal sponsor. And so we're needing to be a good partner in that fiscal sponsorship. And so there's a lot, you have to deal with human resources, you have to deal with payroll, you have to deal with benefits, you have to deal with all these things that we were not having to deal with before. Before it was really just let's figure out how to do this program.
Yeah.
Now we have to build this infrastructure. So I spent a lot of that first year trying to understand what is the infrastructure that we need, and at the same time, how do we scale up our programs in such a way where we can, grow and sustain. So I was trying to do both things at the same time. So once I started, I had a thought to, okay, well, we really need to hire for another position. So at that time, the priority was someone to help with carrying out the programs. So the first hire was the training coordinator. And so the training coordinator is someone who was already pretty good at some of the workshops, but needed to apprentice into a master trainer level. So I spent a lot of time that year with our training coordinator as to, where he is at the point where he could just teach the workshops. And I didn't even need to be there, right? And he could coordinate the workshops, build relationships, receive the requests that are coming in because we receive workshops by request. And so, we're teaching workshops once a week, usually, all year, most of the year. and also be able to work with our members. So, we were volunteer run, so our volunteers were still around and still a heavy, important part of the organization. So the volunteers, wanted to still be involved with the teacher workshops. So coordinating the volunteers, we built capacity to where we could pay folks more for being involved with the workshops, provide more resources for participation. So things like mileage reimbursement, childcare reimbursement, making sure we have hospitality involved. And so after the training coordinator, we had a bookkeeper who was in the organization. We brought the bookkeeper on from a contractor to an employee. So bookkeeper was the next hire to help manage this. In addition to grants funding, we actually get a lot of funding through workshop fees income. So someone to coordinate those invoices was really important, right? And manage the reimbursements, just, track our spending. So it was great to be able to work with someone. So I'm not responsible for that myself, right? So the
Yeah.
bookkeeper. And then after that, we had to take an assessment of what are the ongoing shifting needs and what's the feedback we're receiving from the community about what they want. And so it emerged that we needed to develop a CPR program. One of our volunteers was a CPR trainer. So that was the next hire. So the next person came on and built our CPR program out. Um, and at this rate, we're able to certify people in CPR now. Several people are, because she was able to build that program, bring that knowledge in. And then, hey, Lucretia. And then we needed somebody to support, to just like some underlying operational support for our program staff. So we hired a program assistant, someone to do things like, okay, when we have sign-in sheets, someone needs to take those sign-in sheets, take the information off the sign-in sheets, scan them, provide inventory support, be a backup for the workshops, order supplies, just be like a resource person. So we hired that person, and so it became it became about, okay, what are people telling me the needs are, and do we have enough resources in order to bring someone on to do this role? And what are the things that we wish we could delegate to someone, and we have capacity to do that. So it's really been growing from there.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. I want to come back to this, but one thing you highlighted for us is the importance not only of building an organization, but of building a workplace, right? Both programs
Hmm.
and then the infrastructure and the people
Yes.
that allow you to get it done. Yeah. Karla, let's hear from you. Can you tell us a little bit of the history of Healing to Action and your involvement, how that's shifted over years, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I just again, thanks for having us here, Kate and Jessica and Forefront, and also really great to see familiar faces. And I am such a fan of Martine and Ujimaa Medics. Like I just really love that your organization, Martine. So um and it was really cool to hear also your trajectory. Just I'll start with our mission. Healing to Action's mission is to end gender-based violence by building the leadership and collective power of the communities most impacted. And we are really working to transform the narrative of a helpless victim to a powerful person, a powerful survivor who has the expertise that is needed to address the root causes of gender-based violence in our communities. So I start with that because that is um, our mission really defined like why Healing to Action started. So Shireen and I started as public interest attorneys working on sexual harassment cases back in 2012. And we found that this was before Me Too, but had, I would say this was before Me Too had recognition, right? Um, and we were seeing this in our work, right? Gender-based violence, particularly in the workplace at the time, was not being addressed, but also when we were collaborating with survivors directly who were maybe in unions or a worker center, they were saying like, I actually have never been able to talk about this. And I never was able to talk about this because there was never a space to talk about this in my union or in my worker center. And so Shireen and I, kind of on our nights and weekends, we started to organize with folks in the labor movement around gender-based violence specifically. And we also we were collaborating with labor, and we were also collaborating with folks in the anti-violence movement, and anti-gender-based violence movement. And our work, what would happen is we began to develop these workshops. So some programming, right? We started developing some understanding of programming, and these workshops, community members would come forward and say, like, we need to do something about this. Like, we can't just let gender-based violence be the status quo. We want to do something about this. And none of the other organizations really had infrastructure to support or promote survivor leadership. And and I also think there was like a missing analysis at the time, right? Survivors are even right now in the public narrative, survivors are seen as helpless. They're seen as people that don't have agency, that they need support. And they do. I don't disagree with the need for that. And they also need to be have a space to practice self-determination. And so that's where Healing to Action comes in. And when we started, similar to Martine, we had like some semblance of programming. Well, ours was not as fully developed. We were like, okay, we have these pieces. And we started as a co-directorship as an organization. So I think that's also important. We had my co-founder, Shireen Alamzadeh. We were co-directors, and we were co-directors because we were like, we're women of color on an issue that nobody believes us on, right? Like, no, we were talking to funders, and funders were like, or even people, and they're like, yeah, it can't be that bad, right? Like, gender-based violence can't be that bad. And so we were like, we need the power of two. And also we were like, in the very beginning, it was like out of desperation. Like we were like, there's no way that we could just do this work, the work of an ED. It's so much work. And we had to build our programs and our infrastructure. Like that was like where we were finding ourselves in. We didn't have, we didn't have, we had collaborators, but they were organizations that were kind of like lending a hand, but not really like actually able to do the work that was needed. So we started out, and we continue to be a co-directorship today, but our roles were very much like do everything at once. In the first 3 years, we're like we had no salary. We knew we gave ourselves 2 years of runoff time. We said we have 2 years to raise our salaries. If we don't raise it, that's it. We can't do this. We got a fiscal sponsor at the very outset. And yeah, we had to do like HR, or like we had to like set up a bank account and also run a workshop and also do this and also and get our name out there because like not everybody had heard us. And then Me Too happened. And we were like, we need credibility in the movement because this is not something that broadly is being talked about, right? Like at the time, again, it was this idea of survivor leadership is now all over the place, but it wasn't then. And we had to promote it and we had to kind of put ourselves out there. So we were balancing a lot. And of course, we were also having babies during this time. Um, so when the first parental leave happened, we were like, we can't sustain like just the two of us. We need to hire folks. So we hired a program person to run our base building. And that person was like, didn't last very long because that role was like 3 roles, right? And then we were like, what? And we also realized we didn't really have so much of the work was in our heads, and so much of the way how we functioned as partners was not the way how an organization functions. So like, we would have our sessions and like, okay, figure this out, cool. And like everyone's like, but I need infrastructure. I need to know what my goals are. I need to know how to move in this direction. So we hired, and also we were dealing with fundraising, right? We actually, the second lesson we learned was like the right hire. One of our first hires for development was a development director. And it was like a total disaster. It was a total disaster because we did not have the capacity to know what a development director needs to know to train them and coach them, you know? And I did not plan to become an ED, neither did my co-director. Like neither of us had any leadership organizational experience. For me, what I ended up holding was a lot of the finances, and I held a lot of the program, some aspects of their program work. And part of that happened because I just had a knack for it. It wasn't because I actually knew anything. I was just like, okay, I can figure this out. And Shireen held like HR and foundations. And so there was like, we just kind of divided up the work and just ran with it. In terms of, but once we hired operations, we had an operations manager, and that really helped us see, oh, we can understand infrastructure. We can move in this direction. And we also started to, we realized that like we needed organizational infrastructure. I would say we had a really strong financial infrastructure. Very grateful to a volunteer who just like spent 2 years and just pro bono. It was amazing. But our organizational infrastructure was needing that support. And so in the last couple years, that's really what we've focused on is organizational infrastructure. So we hired an operations director, which has been the best thing that we could have ever done. We are now able to have a manager over the program team because we were doing still the managing. So now we are able to actually do the work of strategy and thought leadership and moving the work at a higher level. So one thing, for instance, that I'm able to do now that I would never have been able to do if I was still running workshops or still doing the bookkeeping or still doing all of those pieces is I'm able to think about like, how does our model of our organization reflect our values of survivor governance, right? And working with the board and working with leaders to build that out. Um, I think, and there's still areas to build out. So, again, I think our development manager would definitely, I mean, we have talked about this of like, we need an individual donor like person, right? Like our development team now needs to be built out even more. And that's just a question of more fundraising. But at this point, that's where we find ourselves.
Okay. Thanks, Karla, for sharing that. There's a lot that we want to come back to and pick apart. I am going to jump around a little bit in the questions that we prepped, just because I'm keeping an eye on the time and I want to make sure we cover sort of some bigger things. Again, folks, if you have questions, clarifications, shout outs, please put them in the chat as we go. But Martine, I want to come back to you and wondering if you can talk to us a little bit more about delegation. You sort of started down this path, but tell us how you choose what you offload to other folks, what needs your personal attention. How do you manage your staff and your volunteers to really maximize your time rather than, as many of us know, how management can become more of a drain on your time?
Yeah, I think that's something that I struggle with a lot. I know a lot of other people do. Sometimes the decision is really okay. What kinds of remember when Carl was talking about just being in the meeting with her co-director and it just kind of like da 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 da, right? And it's just natural. Um, and then when you have somebody else get involved, you have to like give them the step by step.
Yes.
Um, if I realize I have a step by step, I'm like, oh, this is something that could be delegated because there's a step by step that exists, right? But sometimes I realize, you know what, I don't have to create the step by step. Someone else on the team would be better at creating a step by step. And so if there's a process that needs to be developed, it doesn't necessarily have to be me that develops it. Somebody else who's closer to the problem, who deals with the problem more, is going to be better at actually creating the process. I can assist with it. I can give input and I can take what they develop and because I understand all the roles really well, I can, take it and see how it applies across organization. But sometimes I can delegate the development of a process off to somebody else, right? And just try to like make sure is integrated through the organization. Um, Sometimes some of the things that I delegate for, so our most recent hire was communications director, a coordinator, communications coordinator.
Mhm.
And I suppose one reason why they were the last hire is because I did a lot of the comms work myself at first. And it was something that I actually liked doing. So I do like doing this. So when I do it, it doesn't feel so hard, but I also knew that I didn't have the time to really pour into it what it needed. You know what I mean? So we really needed somebody to do that communications work so that um, the, so that the backlog was going to get cleared so that we could actually get that work happening at the frequency it deserved. Um, and it's somebody I can just work with. We can meet, we can bounce ideas, we can collaborate, and there's someone actually making sure that the work is being carried. So sometimes I might do things because I know I like it, and if I like it and I enjoy it, it'll be done well. Um, and some things, it's a matter of just assessing with the other folks on staff, like, okay, how are they doing with this?
Mhm.
And if they're doing great, okay, you got that. See you later. Some of it. One thing that I think we have to be aware of is, okay, is this really, do you really need to do this, or are you just micromanaging? You just want to control the process, you want to control the outcome. And if that's more what it is, then find a way to delegate it, because that's not a good reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a good reason to not delegate something.
Yeah.
Some things I find that it's important that I do because it really is essential to my role. And sometimes I have to look and see, okay, is there someone on the team that really can carry this? So I have to look at what everybody's capacities are, right? If there's no one who really has the capacity to carry this, we don't have the capacity to hire for it, I guess I'm going to do it. Sometimes it comes down to that too.
Yeah. I hear though in Martine in your response a lot of, well, I'm going to say humility, right? It's the ability to accept there's someone else who can do a better job than I can.
Mm-hmm.
There is something that I love and I think I'm really good at, but is not maybe as central to my role as it once was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And both of those are, I think, one of the reasons that your organization is growing is that as a founder, you eventually have to get to a point where you can start to let some of those things go, and equip your staff to do it for you. So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Karla, I want to go back to you, just jumping back to the beginning of our questions, but when the world is on fire, or when you're working with someone whose world is on fire, when something requires this kind of like rapid response, how do you make or shift time in your schedule to respond? And how do you figure out what is something that requires a quick turnaround?
Um, I, I was trying to think about how to frame this because I think of there's like I can go a micro fire or like a big fire, but I'm gonna use the recent like the recent or the current political moment that we're in because I thought that I think that that's like maybe a lot of organizations have that, and I think COVID was actually good, unfortunately, but it was practice for
Mhm.
that. Because I think a lot of organizations we observed and we felt the pressure to jump into like, do this other thing and do this other thing and do this other thing and be everything for everybody. I'm going to share this article in the chat, but one of the things that we did was we used the framework in this article. There's kind of like if you click on it, there's like four quadrants where you can, it says like what your role is in being like a dissident and being like defiant, right? And we looked at our work, our current programmatic work, and we looked at our mission and we said, we actually fit within this bucket and this bucket. Our current work does these things. So let's continue to do those things. Maybe we do deepen our practice. And for us, it was caring for the people that we are part of HTA and leaders, like caring for the leaders, caring for their communities, and also building alternative worlds. That's where we found ourselves, right? That's what we're aiming to do. We're trying to create a reality where gender-based violence no longer exists, where it's destigmatized, where we can talk about it, where we can address the root causes. So, given those two pieces, we thought, okay, let's check our strategic plan, right? I know some people have a strategic plan that sits on a shelf, but we actively use ours. And that really, by combining the current understanding our role in the movement, understanding that our work aligns with those roles, then we just deepen that practice. And so, for instance, every year we do goal setting. We look at our strategic plan. We look and say what has been accomplished, what has not, what is happening. In fact, this year we're extending our strategic plan because we were like, it doesn't make sense to do strategic planning right now because we are literally in this like meat of the strategic plan that like just had didn't it took it's taking longer to come to fruition, but it's there. And so we look at that and then we do our goal setting every year and we have an incredibly rigorous goal setting process. We do organizational, everybody participates, everybody gives, helps forms the organizational goals for the year. And then we do departmental goals, and then we do individual goals and quarterly work planning. And it is the most overwhelming process I've ever done. I hate it. And I'm so grateful when it's over because then I'm like, oh, here's my work plan. Here's what I plan to do. Here's what I was going to do. And now I can imagine people being like, great, yeah, you have a plan, but what about fires, right? The thing is, we need to build time for fires in our plans. That's the thing. And we've learned this over time. Like the first year we did goal setting, we put everything down and like a lot of things didn't happen. And we were like, what did we do wrong? Right. I went back and we are like, take this down a little bit more. And then still not enough. So, like this year, the last year actually was the first year that we finally got it, where there were some big fires. Obviously, everything that's going on, we had to respond rapidly. We had to shift programming. We had to do that. And we could do that because our goals were right sized. And I think that's the most important thing to think about is we cannot control the external circumstances, but we can control what we commit our time to. And it's for someone who has a really hard time saying no, myself, this is the hardest thing to do, but it is essential for us to carry out our work and continue to do it in an intentional way.
Karla, thank you. That is a very wise and helpful response. And thank you for sharing the link to that framework. I'm going to ask just one more question to wrap us up because I want to make sure that we have some time for discussion from folks on the call. But let's shift specifically to a fundraising perspective. This is Phi Club after all. I recognize a lot of us on this call wear other hats in addition to our fundraiser ones. But specifically from that fundraising perspective, what tasks do you prioritize? What do you try to delegate, ditch, or maybe even like reimagine? And Karla, I think you had a story that you could share about this, and then Martine, I'll ask you to also chime in on that.
Yeah. So essentially, given the fires, so as I mentioned, I manage individual donor work, and building out our individual donor program. And it's challenging because, again, I don't have this experience. I've had to get some training and still trying to figure this out. Um, and Shireen manages our foundation piece. With this individual donor program, it's been really hard. Like I think 2023 was a devastating year for me to even do. I like did nothing. Like we had our program and then just kind of like went down because it all went to the side because I had some major fire. And again, we overdid our goals. We did all of that stuff.
Mm.
And so what with the support of the development associate, who's now our development manager, that really helped build some of the infrastructure we needed around and my own training of being able to implement cycles of fundraising, really having kind of more of a system of fundraising down. And so then with the development of the system, then we were able to say, okay, what can I prioritize and what can I just say, I may or may not do this. So I prioritize stewardship and cultivation. And stewardship actually this year is going to get more attention because we're noticing that we're not stewarding our donors in the way that we need to and that we could. And cultivation, I think, you know, that's also like a part of we have a really small base of donors, of individual donors. It's like 1,000, or I would say active, it's like 200. So that's also another piece of like we have 1,000 connections, but like only 200 active. Um, so anyway, just knowing that stewardship and cultivation is prioritized, and now it's delegated across the team. So it's not just me holding it. Like development managers doing some, the impact managers doing some. Obviously, Shireen does a couple, but she focuses a lot on foundation. So it's just trying to think of like how to manage that. The research of the individual donors, that is delegated. I used to want to be able, like, I have to know everything. And like, I actually don't need to know everything. I just need to be told, talk to this person, and here's their information, and this is that. Or here's how you can reconnect with this person, whatever that might be. Um, what I am working on ditching now is in-person meetings. So in the very beginning, I was trying to do like all of these meetings of like cultivation, and I think my cultivation game is still like needing a lot of work, to be honest. But it's always felt awkward. Like I'm like, I'm meeting with you. I kind of want to ask you for money, but I can't ask you right now, but I gotta like do this dance. And so I think I have built enough trust through the cult over time where now I can actually say, I'm not going to meet with you, but we are going to build a relationship, but we're going to focus on how do we how do we maximize your impact in this work, right? And just actually have that be the center of the conversation as opposed to like these random coffees that sometimes would lead to stuff and sometimes wouldn't. And reimagining. So one thing that we've thought about how do we engage our we did a survey a couple years ago in our donor base, and our donor base said like what they really liked about our work is networking, and we also have not done a single in-person event since COVID, like fundraiser. We're just not doing that because we're not generating six figures from those, and we're not going to do it. So we're actually, yeah, virtual fundraising is where we're at for now. But what they did say is they wanted networking. So we were like, how do we do that? And we came up with this idea of an underground dinner. An underground dinner is based off of a Jeffersonian dinner, which many of you call, but I am not calling it a Jeffersonian dinner. Never. But it's an underground dinner, and we facilitate it the way how we facilitate our programming. So we actually have like a dinner, a meal where we have like a prompt centered on our values. And we have a values-based conversation with donors who are all over the spectrum politically, but they're also either committed or they're engaged in a certain way that we want to honor. And we're not just prioritizing major donors, we're prioritizing like we're just kind of right now we don't have like a total system, but a little bit of like a little bit of monthly, a little bit of this, a little bit of new donors, a little bit of everything to help people introduce and connect with each other. And our this year we're going to be having our leaders be with us co-facilitating those dinners. And I think that has really helped put like a face to a name and deepen the relationship, but not just to us, also with each other. Like people are so like, oh, I didn't know someone, like I didn't know this person. And afterwards they're like chatting with each other and doing. So that's
Mhm.
kind of what we've been doing to think about and reimagine. And I really love doing those dinners myself, but that might be something I have to delegate soon.
Thanks, Karla. There's a lot of great information and some good thoughts about what actually yields results. Martine, anything you can share from your perspective in terms of fundraising, what you delegate, ditch, reimagine?
Yeah, so a lot of the grant writing is now delegated. We have one of our members had grant writing experience,
Mhm.
and so they are doing grant writing for us. We collaborate on it, but a lot of the putting together the narrative, the application, and you know they'll write it, and I'll review it, and then they're the one who makes sure it's turned in,
Mhm.
So if there's like a glitch at 11 p.m. the day that it's due, it's not me dealing with it. It's me standing by in case I need support with it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Um, and I'm able to make sure that, we're able to talk ahead of time about, okay, what sorts of documents are we going to need for this application? I'm gathering those documents and they're doing the writing, right? So
Yeah.
doing that helps a lot. Um, I'm trying to find ways to do more individual donor engagement. We do have a very small base of donors, but they're wonderful. And one thing we started doing was these donor circles, virtual. Hopefully, we did 3 of them last year, and it was a way for donors to come together, talk to us, and then get to know each other. And so we worked together on that, and trying to get more folks at organization involved with that. But I'm still playing a big role in that, but we're working together on it. We've never done a fundraiser, actually. Not one of our events has been just a fundraiser. We're doing our very first one this Friday
Oh,
nights. And yeah, somebody has a bar. They're like, you want the bar for a few hours? Yeah.
yeah.
So, but the president of our board is really doing a lot of coordination for that. So I'm ended up having to do very little on it, because it's just like a fun event that people are working on and putting together, that I'm going to show up for, right? And so yeah, no problem. I'll put it in the chat. And
Yeah.
so being able to get a partner on the grant writing has been a great for me, because now I can focus on supporting the staff more, um, thinking through strategy and thinking through a lot of things that we need, and I'm not as hyper focused on having to do the grant writing. So it's been great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Lucretia.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm just conscious of the time. I know I promised that we would have time for Q&A, but both these folks just had so much to share and so many thoughts about how to build the plane, fly the plane, and then manage the people who are flying the plane with you. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run through. I have just like a couple of close up housekeeping notes, so that let me run through those as quickly as possible. We can then, if you have to step off, if you have a 10 o'clock, you can. I know I can stay on for 10-15 minutes at least, and I'll invite Karla and Martine to stay on if possible. Both these folks, though, you can find them on LinkedIn. I'm sure that they would love to continue the conversation. You can go to the Umedics fundraiser. Martine may be busy, but it'd be a great time to make another connection. Ooh, Lucretia's back in the waiting room. Okay, I'm going to share my screen just so I don't forget any of my things that I need to say. First and foremost, Phi Club is monthly. So if you're here this month, please join us next month. Next month, March 3rd from 9 to 10:15. Lisa will be hosting the do's and don'ts of major donor cultivation and stewardship. And you'll want to attend this because she has a major donor who will be joining the call. This is your chance to hear from a donor perspective, what works, what doesn't, and also ask a question to somebody who may not be funding your organization, but knows what that experience of being sought out, stewarded, asked is like, and can share, again, from a donor perspective that we don't always get, what works and what does not. Once again, Phi Club is 100% volunteer driven. We are always looking for moderators. As my shameless plug, I want to say that hosting a Phi Club session is a great way to network. I did not know Martine. I knew Karla. Full disclosure, 2 of our kids go to the same preschool, so I see her in other contexts. I see them in other contexts. But it's a great way to get introduced to some amazing organizations, some phenomenal people who are doing great work in and around Chicago and all over Illinois. So if you're interested in becoming a moderator, please reach out to myself. You can message Jessica as well. I'm on LinkedIn, or I've put my address there. Thank you so much for coming. I do have one more shameless plug, which is that one thing that I learned about from Phi Club is the Chicago Council on Planned Giving. If you are working on a planned giving program or you have interest in deepening your planned giving program, there's a one-day symposium that is coming up on Wednesday, May 20th. I will put this in the chat. Even if you're a small organization, there'll be a panel like this, which I'm going to moderate, like how do you do planned giving in a smaller organization? CCPG, also keep an eye out. They do have a scholarship program. Applications, I think, end up being due during the summer. So you can apply if being a member of that organization is just kind of out of your budget or out of your league, however you would put it. And it's a way to add diversity to the organization so we can all learn to each other. The scholarship just comes with a free membership to the organization for a year, events that you really will get a lot out of, and a great connection to a mentor as well, who can walk alongside you as you deepen or develop a planned giving practice. That is it. I will also put, once again, Susie Lee's email in the chat. Again, if you got this email forwarded to you, if you got the link forwarded to you, I know I shared it with some folks via LinkedIn message or email. Please sign up to join our mailing list. We do this once a month. Forefront will also email you occasionally about some, when they have specifically fundraising resources or events happening, just a way to stay in touch and stay in the loop. Finally, and really what I should be saying is thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Martine. Thank you, Karla. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Again, I'm sorry we ran out of time for questions, but if you'd like to stay on the line, maybe we can even turn the recording off, Emily, and we'll just stick around for 10, 15 minutes if anybody has a burning question or something they want to make sure gets added to